Hi everyone! In this video I'll be showing you how I draw a lion fur using pastel pencils on Pastelmat paper. I recently uploaded a time-lapse of the entire drawing process, so feel free to check that out if you're interested in seeing the whole thing. In this video I'll be showing you how I created particular sections of the lion and explain how I did this. I used mostly the Faber-Castell Pitt pastels and their Caran d'Ache pastel pencils for this piece. I'm using the dark grey coloured Pastelmat, if you're interested in knowing what colour I'm using. The main colours that I used within the fur are Bista and Dark Flesh by Caran d'Ache and 3 Pitt pastels, shades 103, 101 and 176. I don't think they have shade names, but those are the shade numbers which are written on the pencils. I also used some brighter mustardy yellow colours such as Raw Sienna, which is a Caran d'Ache pastel. The way that I do the fur is I just scribble down the base colours first of all, then I blend that out using a blending stump. A blending stump is basically just a stick of paper pretty much, which you can just use to blend the pastels out with. So here I'm using Bista as a base layer. This is why I love using pastels so much, because you can be super scribbly in your base layers and still end up with a great end result. Then after blending out the base colour, I start to add some of this creamy colour. This is Faber-Castell Pitt Pastel number 103. I just add lots of little short strokes which mimic the hairs within the fur. After that I add in some short strokes of a brown. I'm using the Faber-Castell 176 here. This just adds more depth to the fur, because fur is never just one colour. There are always lots of different colours and tones within the fur, so you'll need to look closely at your reference photo to figure out what colours that you see. This process is quite repetitive, especially if you're drawing an animal like this lioness, where there's a lot of the same colour of fur. I find it quite relaxing though, to be honest. I just put on a YouTube video on in the background and just go into my own little world whilst drawing. So I just repeat this process one section at a time. Instead of looking at the lion as a whole, I break it down into some smaller sections. Looking at the whole animal might make you feel quite overwhelmed, and maybe you won't know where to start. Some people prefer to do a base layer over the entire subject first before they start adding any details, but I much prefer to work in sections, as I feel more satisfied once each section gets completed. Otherwise I just look at the whole thing and I feel like I'm getting nowhere, but by breaking it down into smaller sections I feel like I'm making more progress and getting more done. Some sections of the fur are lighter than others, so here I've used a light whitey creamy shade as a base layer for some parts. I then lightly go over some of the areas with a Caran d'Ache Dark Flesh 50%, which just tones down the brightness of the base layer a little bit. Once it's all blended out, I start adding short strokes of that creamy colour, like I did in the previous section. The fur in this section is all going in pretty much the same direction, but if you're working on parts of the face, for example, the fur direction changes all the time, so you'll need to make sure to pay close attention to that. I'll show you a section of the fur on the face now. You can see again here that I'm just scribbling down the base layers first, this time using some darker brown for some parts as the fur appears slightly darker in my reference photo. I'm also using some Bista and cream as well. Then as always I blend the base layers out with a blending stump. You can buy all sorts of sizes of blending stumps, I just get them in a set which has like various different sizes in it. So there's some really thin ones which are great for smaller areas such as the eyes, and then you can get larger ones which are great for sections of fur like I'm doing now. You can see on parts of the face such as around the eyes, ears and mouth, the fur direction changes a lot, which is what you need to pay attention to. Showing the way the fur grows on the face will make your drawing look more realistic. This is because the animal's bone structure is what makes the animal look like that animal. So if the fur direction is all wrong, then it might make the proportions look off, which would make the whole drawing look quite unrealistic or maybe even stylized. The fur of the lion cub looks quite a lot darker than the lioness in my reference photo, so I used more of the brown and Bista in the base layers and slightly less of the cream fur strokes on top. Because the lion cub is a lot smaller than the lioness, it was much harder to get in all of the details. I used shorter pencil strokes for the cub's fur, because if I used slightly longer fur strokes like I did on the lioness, the cub might look quite strange and a bit too hairy, if that makes sense. Ears for me are always the most difficult part to draw. Guessing the fur direction can be quite difficult, and because the centre of the ear is darker and goes inwards a bit, you need to be able to replicate that in the drawing. Luckily, with pastel pencils you can use light colours over the top of dark colours, which really helps when adding these long hairs which are coming out of the ears. I used to do most of my drawings using coloured pencils, and since using pastels I find it incredibly hard to go back to using coloured pencils, since you can't use light colours that well over the top of dark colours. At least with pastels, if you make a mistake you can usually easily correct it by just going over the top of it. If you'd like me to make an in-depth tutorial on how to draw animals' ears, please let me know and I'd be happy to make a video on that for you. I'm going to end this video here. I hope I've given you a few tips so that you can create this sort of fur, or maybe even give pastel pencils a try for the first time. All of the things I've used in this drawing will be linked in the description below, so you can check that out if you're interested. If you want to see the full process of this lioness and cub drawing, then the full time lapse is on my YouTube channel already. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more, then please like the video and subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Bye guys!